Joe, Notre Dame and Georgia Tech square off this weekend in what should be a very good matchup, the Irish versus the Yellow Jackets. I know this is your team. I always kick it off to you first. You are an Irish fan, but I got to admit something before I kick it off to you.
Okay.
I know you're going to get mad, but I am dead serious. I don't think Notre Dame is losing this weekend. However, I think this is going to be a fight. I think it's going to be a battle.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that we have a really good game on our hands here.
Yeah, I was surprised. I saw the spread earlier. It was like 12 points or something crazy like that, which
crazy.
I'm not in on that at all. I mean, this is the total type of a game that causes fits for Notre Dame. And, last week they blew past Stanford, and I talked to him about how that was more of a mental situation. If we're talking pure X's and O's, this Georgia Tech team is scrappy. I know that they've kind of evened out a little bit since that Florida State win at the beginning of the year where there was some pretty big hype for them. But there's two things that they do great. It's run the damn football, and it's play really stout run defense. So Notre Dame in this game, my biggest thing, and to just jump off with this starting point, Notre Dame has to play a very efficient, fundamentally sound football game. They're not going up against the cakewalks that they've had in previous weeks, playing a bloated, overrated Louisville team and a Stanford team that didn't have a pulse. They're going to get a battle if they make mistakes, if they have early turnovers, and if they don't bring the energy early. This could go sideways. I agree with you. I don't think that Notre Dame loses this game because they're still stronger at key important positions to win specific matchups and to win this football game. They've got Riley Leonard. They don't have DJU back there to lose them the game. But they have to be on top of their stuff because they could completely kill themselves against a team that takes advantage of opponents who make mistakes.
Georgia Tech is the Coca-Cola version of NIU. From a schematical standpoint of what they want to do, they'll go in a pistol. They're going to run a lot of guard power, right? I mean, it's what Georgia Tech does. They're going to pull a lot. I mean, Joe, it's exactly what NIU did, right? And now listen, I think that you're going up against it like you. I think they're more than scrappy. I think that they're really physical at the point of attack, and I am not saying that Notre Dame can't handle that at all. I think that they can on both lines of scrimmage. But, Joe, they tackle well. They play well out in space. I know that they have had some situations in games where they got to win blowouts, or if they get in a dogfight, they can be scrappy and win those games too. The thing that I look about in this game, you played a really bad secondary last week in Stanford. Now you play a secondary again this week in Georgia Tech that's had their struggles, their fair share of struggles. Can you continue to develop offensively? Can you hit some explosive plays in the passing game? And if you can, that is how we've seen Georgia Tech get beat, right? Like they're 83rd in the country in passing yards allowed. They've given up a lot of yards by I'm not trying to be rude to any quarterbacks out there, to quarterbacks that are not as good as Riley Leonard, even throwing the football. But, Joe, I got to say this. I think that this is a one-score football game because I think that Georgia Tech's going to come in here and they're going to try to establish the run. And listen, I know that Notre Dame has been very good defensively. Joe, they're 45th in the country in run defense. They are giving up some yards in between the tackles in that running game. They've not been bad. They haven't been elite either like I thought that they were going to be in the beginning of the season. So there are styles that make fights. And, Joe, I got to tell you, I think Georgia Tech's going to want to just run and keep the ball away and get Haynes King out in space and kind of control this game early. And that's why I think it's going to be in a situation where the score at halftime might be like 13-7. And you're like, uh-oh, what's wrong? What's going on over with Notre Dame? But the style doesn't match what's going on, if that makes sense. Right? And so oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No. I was cutting off. Finish what you were saying.
I was just going to say, look, don't be scoreboard watching when you're watching this game because I think it's going to be a very big dogfight, but a one-score game in and of the least.
Yeah, the big key here is Notre Dame should not be overlooking their opponent. And I'm not totally all in on your comparison to NIU. I actually think this is like the Spider-Man meme where you've got Georgia Tech and Notre Dame pointing at each other. You've got Georgia Tech that's not comparable to Notre Dame. They're not as talented. They don't have as many 4 or 5 star recruits on the roster.
About like guard power pull.
Yes, in terms of scheme. But like in terms of the structure of these teams, Georgia Tech's kind of the Walmart version of Notre Dame right now, where they've got a really athletic running back, Jamal Haynes, who we saw
Yes.
completely gash and run past Florida State. And he's also had a number of big games. He's a very productive player in the ACC standings for rushing yards. And they've got a really athletic quarterback who is hit or miss as a passer, is inconsistent at times, but will kill you on the ground. I think it comes down to which team does control that time of possession, because both of these teams thrive off of winning time of possession. That's where this game will be won or lost. One thing that's important to pay attention to, though, Notre Dame's banged up. Notre Dame is progressively getting more and more banged up on a week-to-week basis. Now they're done with Benjamin Morrison, who's done for the year with, I think, a hip injury.
Yeah.
Luckily, they're deep at corner, and they've got some pretty good corners. And Christian Gray, I think, is slowly getting healthier and healthier. But they are across the board, especially defensively, pretty banged up. It's just another thing to monitor, that Notre Dame's depth is starting to seriously dwindle, and it could catch up to them if they lose another starter in this game.
Very well could, man. You're right. They are banged up. And listen, I don't think for this game specifically that Benjamin Morrison being out is going to be like affect you. I think the guys behind them can really stand out, but I will say this though, Joe. No, Georgia Tech's worked on one massive issue in the offseason, and it's showing and winning them football games. Last year, you had a quarterback in Haynes King that had over 20 turnovers by himself. Unreal. Joe, Georgia Tech is second in the country in turnovers, right? Like, they do not turn the football over. They have been very disciplined, and this Brent Key team has been very disciplined. Again, though, man, I'm going to say, like I said last week, I'm going to repeat myself. If you can't throw the ball on them, then you're in trouble, because there are going to be teams that there are going to be better secondaries that you're going to go up against regardless of when it is in the season, whether regular season or playoff, whatever it is. I really think that could really present an issue for you. Look, I know you would say, well, Blake, don't even talk about USC down the road. But I mean, you were doing Woody Marks' film today. Look how good that they've been in the running game. Anyway, regardless, it's not going to affect you this week. If you can't throw the football on them, you're in trouble. Now, Joe, there's one thing that I'm really worried about Notre Dame in this. They've had a really tough time converting on third downs. They're tied for 80th in the country in third down offense, and I am flabbergasted that that's happening to Mike Denbrock. Really, I am. He's been very efficient, at least since I've known him. But look, man, I would take Notre Dame to win here. I'm not taking them to cover at all. I think Georgia Tech might keep this a one-score game, and it's going to be a dogfight.
I know that the Louisville game might spark some optimism for Notre Dame to come out and smoke them, the way that they handed Louisville pretty strong, and they were able to win them they were able to beat them by a decent margin, and Louisville handed Georgia Tech pretty easily, and you're getting Georgia Tech at home. But the main thing is that we can't play transitive property here at this conversation. We need to acknowledge that this is, again, a team that's going to scrap and claw until the end of the game. That Louisville game for them was so lopsided because of a couple crazy bounces and bad plays on special teams. If they play more efficiently in some of those areas, Georgia Tech could have won that football game and should have won that football game. So we can't just pay attention to scores and say it applies.
Well, look at Ole Miss. I mean, Ole Miss loses to Kentucky. Kentucky got blown out by South Carolina. Ole Miss blows out South Carolina and then goes on the road and loses to LSU. I mean, you better not do transitive properties. By the way, just throwing this out there, LSU beat South Carolina and Ole Miss by the same score, 3. So, I mean, again, if you're going to go in here and do transitive properties, good luck. Stop.
Yeah, there's a reason why we don't do them on these show. And
no.
Speaking of,
go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of which, we've got a lot of Texas fans bringing up the Mississippi State game in our comments, which I'm like appalled by that's happening.
I'm not appalled by it at all. You know why?
It's the only argument that they have.
No, it's Texas fans. I don't expect any less.
Yeah.
So, look, I'm going to take Notre Dame in this one, but Joe, I'm just going to tell you.
I'm with you.
You better not play around with them, because they will mess you up now.
No, I'm not. Look, I am a realist. I am not a blind Notre Dame fan. I will not sit here and say that we're gonna kick their ass. Look, I am cautious because in any game for Notre Dame in my lifetime, we always find a way to play down to an opponent, and this is not an opponent you want to play down to because they will take advantage of any issues that you have and any mistakes you make.
100%.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.